Meeting is called to order. It is 1:30 and then some. This is a meeting of the Zone 9 committee who reports to the Board of Supervisors. And we are meeting right now. We are meeting right now.
Sorry.
You're forgiven once. Anyway, at the beginning of our meeting, we do introductions and explain why we're here. And so we all know who's around the table here. I'm Wayne Peterson. I'm representative at large for the Board of Supervisors County. And I chair this meeting.
Hi. I'm Lucia and I'm the Sustainability and Natural Resources Analyst for the City of Slough.
Ready, city biologist.
Michelle Schwarzman, City of Slough.
Teresa Jansen, I'm an executive director at Sun Care Foundation. We're at 173 Upfield Road.
Brian Nelson, city engineer for City of San Luis Obispo.
Bob Hill, City of San Luis Obispo, Natural Resources.
John Hall with the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo and County at Large seat.
Christine Mulholland, city at large.
Troy Barnhart, County Public Works Engineering staff.
Chelsea Moore, the supervisor of Public Works. Emily Francis, city council member, alternate.
Georgetown County Public Works, Water Resources Division.
Maybe County Public Works, also
Yeah.
water resources.
Brendan Clark, County Public Works and Committee Secretary.
I'd like to welcome the new members from the city particularly. Thanks for joining us. The second item on the agenda is the approval of our October 12th minutes, which was circulated a week or so ago. Anybody have any comments or questions regarding the minutes? So,
Yes, I would like you to please look at page 5, number 8, small creek maintenance B, big B, the flooding at Perfumo. Was that meant to be 1995? Wayne, were you actually, no, Brendan, did you actually comment on 1955 or was that meant to be 1995, the big floods?
It's a really good catch. Not the probably 95, but you know,
I think we
that's
were talking about
Yeah.
95. I know I was mentioning 95. I mean, we talked about 95.
probably 95.
we had no recollection of 55.
Yeah,
I-
I think,
On the table, so-
I think that's clearly a typo.
I
So
was on the earth, but I wasn't here in town yet. Yeah,
yeah, not to say 95.
probably 95, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's where we
Any
had
other
the video.
corrections?
We had the video from you in that area.
Yeah, we had the video at that time.
Right, right.
No other corrections. If someone will make a motion in
Yes,
favor.
I move the minutes, be approved as amended.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And it's approved. Yes, correct. And item 3 is a presentation from the county and city staff on the vegetation and maintenance program. So
Take it away. All right.
go.
So as we've been discussing and talking about for a while here, the city and county updated our reimbursement agreement. This reimbursement agreement covers a number of topics, including design, environmental work and permitting of the Mid-Higuera Bypass project. Also is the funding mechanism for the city when they do certain types of work in the city limits. A lot of Freddie's work, sediment removal, CIP work is reimbursed through this agreement. We updated it in September of 2021 to allow reimbursement to city for work in county areas. And then we outlined what those responsibilities of each agency would be. This is, kind of covered a couple different goals, being there's kind of critical creek maintenance areas that affect both the city and the county that are right on the border there. And so this really just allows us to look beyond just a city boundary when we're talking about the creek. And this project and this pilot program really utilizes some of the framework that was set up in volume 2 of our waterway management plan. And I'm going to hand it over to May to talk a little bit about what we specifically did here.
Hi, I'm May. I'm an engineer with the County Public Works Water Resources Division. And I'll be giving a quick run through of the work we did out on East Fork. So as Brendan mentioned, this was a joint effort between the city and the county. And the primary goal is to increase and maximize our channel capacity by removing dead and downgrade. And so the maintenance work was contracted out to the California Conservation Corps over a 3-week period from mid-October to early November. And during this time period, we were able to clean out about 2,400 feet of the channel. So here's a picture of the area we worked on. And during the first week, we were able to clean out about 800 feet of the channel, working mainly near the confluence. And in the second week, we went down along East Fork, Slow Creek to clean about an additional 1,100 feet. And on the last week, we focused on the area above Buckley Road on that section of Tank Farm Creek, and we cleaned about 500 feet on that side. So a total of 2,400. So here are some before and after pictures I put together, and there's Freddie over there, but he's now removed from here.
Not quite as camouflaged as you thought.
Must be that best.
This was near the confluence. And this is the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last slide. Oh, I guess real quickly, I guess before I talk about 2023 achievement, is Freddie, anything you want to add about the work we did, last year?
I mean, this was our initial effort to get out there to address some of the concerns about Buckley Road flooding. And I mean, it's clearly evident by the pictures, it's just lack of maintenance. And so, when we started this partnership and agreement extension with the county a number of years ago, this was the entire intention, was to get through there and clean all that stuff out. In addition to the work that we did under the flood control umbrella, we had the opportunity to work on the downstream side of East Fork as it goes into San Luis Obispo Creek through a fuel reduction effort. So in addition to the 2,400 feet of creek that we did under the flood control effort, before winter rains came, we did probably another 1,500 feet working from the downstream section, which is off the bottom right left corner of the map there. And then there was just a small piece in between that we didn't have time to get to.
Is that on the Jimmy Stickler property that you're talking about? That right at the corner of Buckley and Batchel, the
Freddie,
Master's property?
you can point to the area here.
Is that, I'm not sure where you're.
So this is city property down here. And so we worked basically from the confluence is right about here. So we worked up about to here. So this whole section of East Fork, we did the same thing as we did up here under the auspices of fuel reduction. So we had a grant from the Fire Chiefs Association or something like that. We had a contractor go out there and basically do the same thing that California Conservation Corps did. So there was just this small piece in between, basically here and here. It hasn't been done yet, but we'll be forecasting that for later this year to make sure that we've gone through everything at least once, and then also continue working up Tank Farm Creek towards Suburban as well.
How about the creek upstream from the stables up towards to the right there?
And so that's so we had a right of entry from Thousand Hills Pet Resort. So we'll work on that kind of Bennett Creek as well, getting as far as we can on East Fork proper next year, this year as well, later this year.
Now, I had the honor of seeing some pictures taken up in there after the storm. And there's a huge amount of debris. There was cut debris from somebody cleaning the creek upstream from there.
Hmm.
It floated down and blocked the bridges down there. I can show you the pictures if you want to see them, but it's
Yeah.
I think there's need for educating people who are doing creek cleaning as to what they can and can't do and where they should keep their debris.
And we've talked with other property owners in the area about when they cut debris, don't throw it in the creek. So, you know, educating about flood control and flood potential reduction. You know, in that same general area, so.
Can they contact you if they have questions regarding what they can do and can't do in the creek?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That one section in the middle that hasn't been done, is that city property or county property or private?
It's private.
From like
You're right.
here up is private.
And that's all the Buckley Stables property. From here down is city property.
was
So
it
like I said-
Caltrans too?
Caltrans is to here, and then this is another owner.
Freddie, I think that section you're talking about is on the Lemon Orchard property. Used to be the Morabito property
There's a number of property owners
back there, right?
basically.
Yeah.
There's a handful there.
So that's now Bunyan Brothers.
Right, so right. That's right.
So I was referring to the Buckley Stables property, so that's all this right here.
Correct.
Okay.
Caltrans does come across, so,
And you did do some of that, didn't you?
Yeah.
But you did do some of it.
yeah, down to where the color transit.
Yes, Kim's gonna be there. She's gonna play.
Oh, cool.
Oh, there she is. Okay, all right. Gotta get you a chair. I'm in.
Okay.
So I mean, it was. I thought it was a very successful project. Unfortunately, just due to the intensity of the storm. You know, I mean, we experienced, you know, damages throughout the city of both upstream and down of the city as well. But it was a start. Also with the Buckley extension, I think that will also help to kind of contain the water in the channel. I guess Buckley Road did have water over top it for a couple hours.
We have some video later on. Yeah.
Perfect. And then went back into the channel. So I think, you know, what we did immediately upstream of Buckley on Tank Farm Creek was very helpful. I mean, that channel was just completely choked with dead vegetation. As Apple Ranch continues to build out, we've got some agreements in there for them to help us out with channel maintenance as well. So my plan is to continue all the way up to as far as we can get until we get to.
Take one.
Unitil.
Can't get to Tank Farm.
Isn't that?
Well, because Tank Farm is their Chevron is redoing all the hydrology in there. So whatever they're doing up there, we'll make sure that we're complementing that effort. To make sure the channels are clean.
Well, I know the channel that parallels Buckley on the Amlo Ranch side is still full of debris. Just full of debris.
Yeah, so like I say, you know, and they said we got 500 feet up from Buckley on Tank Farm Creek.
Yeah, this blue area.
And that was week number 3. We had 4 California Conservation Corps members that week. So I was impressed to get as much done as we had. So like I say, we'll continue building on this effort this year, sorry.
Yeah.
Next fiscal year, Freddie. You're good.
Okay.
Next fiscal year.
Next fiscal year, that's right, thank you.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Just my observation here is a significant improvement, and I'm looking forward to continuing to build on this. And on that,
And kudos to the CCC. They've been
Yes.
around a long time. They do so much great work here in our county.
so looking forward to later this year. We don't know exactly where the extents and where we're going to work. I think it's logical to kind of not finish, but complete the East Fork work. But there are a number of areas that were identified in the development of the pilot program, and I just wanted to show you here. There were 3 areas, and the first here, is the Lower Slow Creek, include all along 101. Including Davenport, and where we were talking about was just this part here. This is where East Fork is, and so this is one area, and then also under consideration would be where Main Slow Creek comes into the city at Cuesta Park around Reservoir Canyon, and where Perfumer Creek enters the city from the west. So these are areas we all had identified to be a part of this, around 5-year pilot program. And as city and county staff discuss, what we want to try to accomplish this year, we'll let you guys know during the updates. So anything to add or? Yeah, comments?
I'm gonna.
Would you introduce yourself, please?
Kim Stickler, I Buckley Staples. And Freddie and them came this year and that helped a lot. I mean, I can honestly say if I wouldn't have put goats in there in August and they wouldn't have come, they would have been not taking anything. So if we can do that every year, that would be great. And try to keep the creek where there's not much water, just because, I know this year was not the norm.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, our new norm is gonna be a lot more water coming that way from all the developments. And I had to hand evacuate 30 head of horses in waist deep water and had to walk them a mile to get to a trailer to get them out of there. So I don't want that to be my new norm. It's not fun, it's scary. So if we can do that every year, that'd be great. Because if they wouldn't have come, and if I would have put the goats, unfortunately, there would have been no way Freddie and them could have finished that job. But being that they were able to go in after, I can honestly say that there would have been not saving anything. The horses, 4 houses, my hay barn, everything would have been gone. And people would have gotten hurt trying to save the horses. So.
Yeah, your efforts with the goats, I mean, like I say, just knocking down a lot of the brush and weeds and stuff like that, allowing the crew to get in there was amazingly helpful. So thank you for that. We're going to continue to work there. So we're not going anywhere. Don't worry.
Thank you.
And then hopefully once we get to, a more cleaned up state, hopefully just running goats through there and not having to have hand crews go through there year after year will suffice. And, like I say, continuing to look at the getaway. Barbara Lynch, that's just one thing that stuck with me from Barbara Lynch back in the day was, always making sure that we're focused on the getaway. We want that water to get away from us. So working downstream, continuing to work downstream, especially at the pinch point. And when the county finishes up with their East Fork study, looking at the implementation actions that come out from that and how can we improve the channel, the capacity, the conveyance and all that. So.
I have to give some credit to Ken Schwartz. He always called the getaway at Los Osos Valley Road, the big barrels there, the getaway, and Mark picked it up from him, but Ken Schwartz used to call that the getaway.
Perfect. Well, thank you for updating my.
Just a little historical perspective here.
But yeah, it's not going anywhere again.
You also had a bridge washout, which has never happened before.
Yeah. We had our first bridge washout. We have the 2 creeks that meet on our driveway. The first one washed out, which has never happened before. So, I don't know how much more water we're gonna be taking on every year. I'm fine with the steady flow, even if that creek ran all year round, I'm fine with that, but if we're gonna be taking on magnitudes of water where it's washing out our bridges every year, that's gonna be a hard one.
Yeah.
A real hard one.
Yeah.
So.
Is any more comments on the city county maintenance program? And we can move on to open for. Check.
I've got one comment. Some of us suspect that we're getting more water because of the developments that have been going on. I'm not talking Apple Ranch, I'm talking the ones further you know, like the Rigetti, and there's just a lot of development going around all over San Luis. So whenever you're covering up ground that the water used to percolate, now it's gotta go somewhere. And so the runoff is much bigger than it used to be. I mean, that's kind of what we think, whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. But the other thing I was thinking about is when these creeks have all this debris in it, it kind of slows the water flow. And that could be a good thing, because I look at what happened at Avila Beach at the resort and how flooded they got. And if all these creeks, you know, and this is my brain thinking, if all these creeks are cleared and now the water flows, is it going to come down faster and more water? And then it's going to at some point not be able to carry that water, and then that's where all the overflow, because everything heads down the beach, right? That's where all of it's going. So anyway, that was it's kind of just a observation. I just kind of wondered about that. I mean, I think you need to clean out creeks. I'm not saying don't clean out creeks, but I guess it's maybe the width of the channels. Are they wide enough, or, you know, to handle the amount of water that is now coming down?
That's a good introduction, item number 4. Let's move to item number 4, which is supposed to be this discussion.
Oh,
So let's go ahead with this discussion.
I would like to comment that, having kept rain records back to 87 in my backyard, that there was more rain in 1995 and there was a lot less hardscape at that time. I agree that the more hardscape we are building everywhere, that it's harder to get more water to perk. But when we have these massive storms, our little narrow creeks cannot handle that amount of water when it all comes down. I don't care how much you clean out. People say, well, let's dredge lagoon the lake. Well, you can only dredge it a few feet, then it's going to fill up and the water's still going to flood over the entire floodplain. There's too much water when we have these massive historic kinds of storms, and there's no way, in my opinion, that we can protect ourselves from it. We'll talk about it in a minute. The Mid-Higuera bypass, bring that up to 25-year flood level. Well, that's sure gonna keep the water in that creek, isn't it? I don't think so. So that's where we're at. We built this town on these little narrow creeks in this little narrow valley here. And when there's a huge amount of water, we can't. I don't believe anybody can tell me that things aren't going to flood. Floods are inevitable when we have these massive storms. That's been my perspective from watching it over the years.
So I'll chime in, to Kim's point, you know, I mean, these events that are coming through, hopefully they're not going to be the new norm. But it seems like, you know, these atmospheric rivers, you know, when those things come in, it's just kind of like batten down the hatches and hold on. You know, I think back to January 2021, the 3-day storm event that we had at the end of the month, 15 inches of rain fell at the top of the Irish Hills. All that water funneled through Perfimo Creek, through Laguna Lake, and then down and away. I got reports from folks at Ocean Air Gardens just downstream from LOVR. The water was 10 inches from my back door. Okay, well, you didn't flood, but think about the magnitude of water that came down, right? And so, I mean, 15 inches of rain in 3 days is a lot of water for it to convey through the system and, you know, have minor damages. It's these kinds of events that, you know, it's what I typically look out for. It's like, okay, we need to be prepared. So luckily we did what we did, both of us. So thank you again.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's another thing as we think about climate change and, you know, what climate adaptation projects should we be looking at? So one thing that, you know, we're looking at considerably is updating the waterway management plan. So that's an effort that we're going to be looking at in the near future with our city council approving the climate adaptation and safety element update of our general plan 2 weeks ago. That's new marching orders to figure out, you know, what are these storms looking like now and in the future, and how do we be as prepared as possible? You know, I've spent probably 15 years in the creeks, roaming up and down and seeing, you know, if there is debris, if there isn't debris. If there is debris, it will slow the water down. If there isn't debris, it's going to speed the water up. And that water is hungry. And so it starts taking a lot of the sediment, and we're getting this incision in the creeks. And that's where we destabilize the banks and have more bank failure. we expose the roots from the trees that are growing along the creek banks and, they fail and fall in the creek. And so it's a vicious cycle. And so coming up with, a contemporary plan, factoring in climate change, we were successful in having a hazards and vulnerability analysis with climate change projections. And so now with new information, integrating that to the existing waterway management plan so that we have, kind of that future forward-looking view of what do we need to do, like I say, to be as prepared as possible. So it was fascinating to go around in January night. I live in Paso, and so just driving down the freeway was fascinating enough to get to work. And then driving around during the storm and looking at the bridges and different sections of the creek. It was a powerful storm. I call it angry because it scoured the banks. I don't think we'll have to worry about flood control in the downtown core because there's like nothing left. It all got moved downstream where we've been doing incredible cleanup to be prepared for the next time. But still, there's a lot of work to do. So,
several years ago, when we had the floods of the 69 and 73 period, the city adopted a requirement that people that lived in the floodplains would have flood protection devices as a part of their building to protect it. And I almost think that the wise thing to do is provide a plan for what do you do when it does rain, because like you say, the water is going to come down those creeks, and the creeks only handle about a 10-year storm. Everything else is floodplain. We're building in the floodplain, encroaching on the creek that way. And so we're taking up its useful area and putting it into productive use for us. But that productive use gets damaged when it gets flooded. And so we need to, when we do build in those areas, we need to build in such a way that the storm isn't going to hurt us. By building up or building protection devices that work with the property, like the floodgates we put downtown. A lot of the buildings have floodgates, whether the people know where they are or what to do with them. The story with they all have floodgates when they build, and the idea was that were designed to hold out 2 or 3 feet of water around the property and protect that property because we knew it was going to flood. We looked for a long time at downtown San Luis what to do with it. It's, the creek's on a 10 to 25 year capacity in various spots, so it's going to flood. And we looked at upstream detentions, and people were fearful of the effect of a broken dam upstream, which even though the dam only fills up for an hour or two during the flood, but it's still, we couldn't do it politically. And so we looked at a bypass channel down Marsh Street, and that was prohibitively expensive and not very productive either. Couldn't carry that much water. We looked at putting in walls along the creek, but again, then people were fearful of those walls being breached at some time and having a New Orleans problem, where they breached their Mr. Moe channels and flooded homes terribly. So there really isn't a good solution other than trying to build your projects in a way that addresses the issue that it's going to be flooded sometime. I had one person complain to me that he couldn't get into his property during the flood because the parking lot and the streets are flooded. I told him, well, the streets are designed for 10-year floods. You get a 20-year flood, they're going to flood, and you won't be able to get in and out. But we make sure your building's a foot above the 100-year flood, so it won't get wet inside. So we do what we can do, but we can't solve the problems completely because we can't afford to. But we need to be smart in how we develop our properties, so that when the floods come, we don't get hurt by the floods.
And then there's the ongoing, never-ending issue of debris removal and removing down trees and cleaning the creek. So,
well, that's something we should be doing. Is keeping it working, making things work as good as possible.
Yeah, you get one down tree blocking a culvert, and then your 10-year capacity culvert becomes nothing, and it's totally
No capacity at all.
yeah. Or if we've done an amazing job at cleaning out the creeks, heaven forbid a tree goes down during the storm because it gets undermined from the velocity or whatever, and then it gets hung up. That's the game changer right there. And that's my biggest fear. Going into the winter season, making sure that we've gone through our checklist and cleaned what we can. But then, having to, especially like January 9th, there was one of the big cypress trees at Elks Lane I mean, probably a DBH of about 4 feet around. One of the property managers down on Elks Lane, we've been in contact. Two of the big cypress trees came down in the December 12th storm event. We had those removed. And then I got a text from him January 9th. He's like, well, I hope you figure out where the third one went to because it's gone. I'm like, gone? And so, you know, I mean, a big, huge cypress tree went under the Elks Lane Bridge and it landed behind DMV. Fascinating, but it's like, you know, here again, right? Had that thing gone sideways, we'd be having a much different conversation about Elks Lane.
And we don't have access everywhere, much of the creek is private property, so you gotta to get rights of entry to move all this stuff. Yeah.
One other thing that everybody needs to understand that in development, every developer is required to absorb the increased peak flows that come off his property, but not let the water go, but just to delay it so it doesn't, so the peak coming off the property doesn't exceed what there was before the development. The effect of that is making the creek flow longer after a storm because the water is being held back and then released. So we'll see more water flowing in our creeks, which will lead to more erosion and more standing pools later on in the season than we've had in the past. Well, the county's got a report to us on the actual storm now from the technical side. So why don't we hear that report?
Yes, so I'll turn it over to Troy. The goal for this is to help just frame our discussion and understanding of the storm. And turn over to Troy and we'll go from there.
All right, well, thanks for me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working with the county engineering staff. I'm not in the water research department, but I have a division, but I have a background in climate science and another degree in civil engineering. So I have appreciation for maybe the more scientific side of things. And with that, I'm going to talk about the hydrology a bit, kind of what goes into this. A lot of our discussion that we've talked about so far is more so on the hydraulic side, how the water actually moves around. But what is more easy or was more easily characterized is how much rainfall we've got and how does that compare to, you know, statistically to how much rain this area has gotten in the past. So this is a summary I put up for the entire county, but generally the entire county streams and creeks got a 5 to 25 year rainfall event. And so that means that this was something like a 4% or a 20%, somewhere in there, annual chance this would happen every year. We've just been fortunate, maybe, or unfortunate in the last 20 years or so that it's been very dry. But historically, this is not that big of a storm. Some of the key things that happened both here in SLO and elsewhere were that there were saturated soils all over the place. I'll have a slide for that showing you just how dramatic that is. And then it dramatically increases runoff. In 2021, storm that Freddie talked about earlier, the soils are very dry and it took a while for significant runoff to actually come. And that's why the flooding was limited. And then with the breeze, there were some really strong winds in the morning, like 45 to 70 miles per hour on the coast and in the inland valleys. And that just creates huge problems. Can we go to the next slide? So I wish the colors came through a little bit better, but the top row there and the bottom row are comparing 2023 on the top and 2021. These are a couple days around the storms in January of each year. And green and blue is basically more wet. So if you step on the bottom row across left to right, you see that most of the county is relatively yellow and green, meaning the soils were generally dry. During the event, you see that the western part of the county, that bottom middle one, it started to get green and blue. That makes sense as things saturated over the storm. But then if you compare that to the top row, you see that going into the January 9th storm in 2023, the county or these areas were basically already as wet as they were during the storm in 2021. So things were primed, if you will, for the flooding we saw. And then you see on the 9th that the entire county is saturated. Basically any rainfall that was coming in, it's not going to the ground, it's coming right off. So to talk a bit about the zone 9 area, the bottom right is a table of rainfall recurrence, and we evaluate those over different time intervals. So, you know, the amount of rain you receive in 1 hour, the amount of rain that you receive in 3 hours, the amount of rain you receive in 6 hours. And those different time frames inform, you know, different types of watersheds. A smaller area, you know, like a smaller creek, might be most responsive to a 1 hour time frame, whereas a larger watershed, like the area leading down towards Avila Beach on Slow Creek, that's something more like a 6 hour. And so you can see on that table that if you think of maybe the majority of the Slow Creek watershed is between a 3 and a 6 hour watershed size, about how long it takes the rain to transit down and through the creek. This was a 10 to 20 year rainfall event. And then we try to figure out how bad was the flooding. And that's a little bit of a different measure because rainfall is not flooding. But I checked the waterway management plan model as well as the new FEMA model that FEMA just published for Slow area. And this actually was 10 to 25 year flooding as well on Lower Slow Creek, which we have a little bit more updated information for. And so again, to emphasize Christine's point earlier, 1995 was probably worse, and this area has seen much worse floods than this. Before you go to the next slide, Brenda, go back one real quick. I'll take your question in 1 second. Okay. So you may have heard like the record-breaking rainfall like Cal Poly. So the reason why this storm broke the record, even though it was only a 10 to 20 year storm or something like that, is because rain began nearly exactly at midnight. It was like a perfectly timed storm for a calendar day. You'll see on the next slide that in 1995, we had a 24-hour period where we got a couple more inches more rain within a 24-hour period that wasn't a calendar day. And so, Kathy, did you have a question on this?
Yeah, I have a real issue with rain gauges in San Luis Obispo,
Sure.
which is why I got my own, and I trust it. How can the gas company, isn't it located in San Luis?
Yes.
How can it be so low when look at all the others?
Yeah, that was something I observed as well. I
Well,
looked at
something's
some.
wrong with them, right? I think you said.
I've watched the same thing. It's always low.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's it could be an issue with the rain gauge itself, but I kind of doubt that. I kind of think it's like I think there might be a kind of a localized rain shadow effect right there from the hills. Because I looked at rain gauges all in the area, and there were a couple other volunteer gauges online the day of the storm, right around that, the Marigold Center. They were also kind of right around what the gas company was at, but all throughout the eastern side of the city and in the East Fork watershed, they were higher elsewhere. So I think it's a local thing. I don't think it's the gauge itself.
I think we're checking.
Sure.
I think the South Street Hills cause a swirl.
Good.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the hills working right there.
Pointed right at the hills.
We're both south of the airport and get the flows right straight from the ocean down there, and my gauge is always, I've got a tipping bucket gauge, and it's always more than the gas company.
Yeah, I believe it.
But it's been consistent with Kathy's and some others around.
And my daily rain records going back to 87 are most of the time I'm getting more rain than Cal Poly or the airport. The last couple of years during that real end of the drought, I was finding what little rains we were getting. I was actually just slightly below Cal Poly, but I'm right there off Oaks Valley Road in the floodplain. And the Irish Hills, it just comes over the Irish Hills and dumps down in that Perfumo floodplain area. And that's the only way I can explain it, because this year I've had more than all the reports for Cal Poly or the airport. Whenever I see them, I'm still getting a little bit more than the other reports.
Yeah, the topography in this area is so varied.
Yeah,
and
there's
the storm
microclimates
direction,
all over. There's this little
depends, yeah.
microclimate that's all over, yeah.
So this is to talk a little bit more to compare 2023 to 1995. And so the top graph there is hourly rainfall intensities throughout the storms. And I've converted them so that they were, on the same time. If you begin at time 0 when rainfall began, basically, and you walk through the hours of the storm. The blue is 2023, the white gray is 95. And so you see that they're kind of comparable up to the first, maybe 12, 18 hours. But then 1995 had a second wave, basically another 8 hours or so that came after that, which were even more intense than its initial wave. And so that's what really caused the most significant flooding in 95 was that second wave, where as if you think back to that the illustration I had earlier, the soil moisture, after the first wave of storm, everything's blue, everything's primed, and then you get all that rainfall going straight to the creeks.
And that's what my records show, and I remember everything was just saturated and deeply green, and then 8 inches in 24 hours. And it just spreading out, because
So, yeah, I wish we had better.
I've been
records there.
saturated. This year, it came up several times in December. The floodplain rose a bit, but it drained off quickly. As soon as it stopped raining, it just kind of disappeared and drained off. But by the time we got the big ones in January, the soils were pretty saturated, and it really was holding the water a lot longer.
So anyway, next slide. And so I had a couple of things to close out. I got one slide here on the tides and another on Laguna Lake in a second. And so there's been a lot of discussion around the high tide that morning. There was an abnormally high tide that was actually accentuated by the storm surge, if you will, from the big waves rolling in. It was a tide of like 6+ feet at Fort San Luis. And so that forms a tailwater that makes it difficult for the creek to flow out to the ocean. But that effect is limited. That is 6 feet of water, but when you think of the elevations moving up the creek, at some point that 6 feet down at the bottom isn't going to matter if the elevation of the water so far upstream is like 100 feet, So with that, I ran through the hydraulic models a little bit to play around. I kind of came to this that if you believe the hydraulics, and this doesn't refer to, like the estuarine habitat or anything. This is just during a flood, how far up can the tide impact the flood water level. That only goes up really to the kind of the bend of the creek back to the east there, to the northeast of Avila Beach, kind of right around the San Luis Bay Drive bridge there. Anything upstream of that is not affected by the tide. And that tide did peak around 10:45, which I was down there, was right around when the water was highest on January 9th. And so this is a graph from the county's gauge at Madonna Road, which is the outlet of Laguna Lake. And you see that the storm got very close to getting up to the top of Madonna Road intersection. Whatever the old city engineer was who designed those culverts seemed to do a great job, because it's a big storm and the culverts handled them. But you also see that Laguna it detains flows for longer than the peak flood downstream. And so the peak, I didn't really do a good job of showing the time there, but the lake actually topped out later than the peak floods downstream, which were in the morning, midday. The lake actually kept filling until sometime in the afternoon. And so that kind of emphasizes what the waterway management plan, or how the waterway management plan analyzes Laguna Lake, and it is a big detention facility. It slows down flood flows. But if you were to get something like 95, where you get a wave of rain after the lake is probably already full, basically, then that it doesn't have capacity to absorb that, and it's just going to keep passing flows at its peak, kind of at its peak outlet rate, if you will.
Laguna Lake flooded about the same in 95 as it did in the storm.
I believe it.
It's very close to the same levels, my observation.
Yeah, it would have just been discharging at the highest rate for longer. And it would have been full for longer, but I doubt it would have gotten much higher, because those culverts just have a great amount of capacity.
And built really fast, went down really fast. Also it backwatered all the way to Florida.
Yeah, the back, you can see how sharp that curve is going up. I mean, it filled very quickly. Because those culverts are large, it will drop, relatively quickly at the start, but then for the lake to fully drain out, actually, restore that flood control detention capacity, it takes about 2, 3, 4 days to drain down completely. Not off, people's backyards and stuff necessarily, But, to provide the actual storage within the lake.
You all know why the properties flood around in the lake. It's not from the lake directly, it's the storm drains that feed in the lake, bring the water back into those people. So it's a backward flow of those storm drains.
Yeah, we've
Down in
got,
Los Angeles, they put gates on those things so they won't flow backwards. I don't know if that would work or not here, but
I mean, the thing is, it's gonna back more water, it's gonna contain more water in the lake, right? Water's gotta go somewhere.
well,
So
keeping the
there-
water from flowing back into
Yeah.
the residential proproperties.
I see, right?
I don't know if it, that would take some studying to know if that would be effective or not.
we have some photos of Ocean Air and Madonna
Yeah.
coming up.
The culverts are at 126, right? So you can see the top of the outlet culvert is 128. So before you're even at the top of the outlet culverts, you're backwater into the ocean.
Yeah,
The thing to note here is the bottom of the culverts is at about 120. So like it was already outflowing, right, at
Mhm.
121 or whatever before the storm.
Yes, part of the work we're doing right now is to clean the debris from downstream of that crossing up to LVR to allow the water to flow. So it doesn't create a backwater condition, so that should help as well.
Okay, Wayne, I don't remember in 95, like that whole Ocean Air area being that flooded where cars were under water.
Yeah, they
Like,
were 4 feet deep, because that's designed there for the
send you
water,
a video.
the backflow of the Laguna Lake, the overflow goes into Ocean Air Drive on the lakeside, and it comes right up to the garage level, but it doesn't enter the garage. That is the level where that it's somehow engineered. It comes up on the sidewalks, 4 feet deep, people are on their boats and all.
There's 3 or 4 houses that don't have that damage out there.
They'll come up.
And most of them are like you're talking about, it comes right up at their garage floor, their front door. Just stops, and if people wouldn't drive down the street and make waves, then
Right.
they dry.
Exactly.
So if we could keep the National Guard and those guys from slinging their big trucks down the streets, it'd save some damage.
all right, and I think what we have now are just some photos we've collected. This is obviously is not an exhaustive map, but the best that May and I could do of collecting, the county, Caltrans and others, city, just documenting where did we have flooding, as Freddie alluded to. There's been some discussions between city and county staff about what potentially a water management plan update could look like. And so we've been going through and documenting, right, where do we have all these flooding issues throughout the watershed? Because that's going to be, this is going to be a key input into where are the current problems? There's some things are better, some things are going to be better soon, like with Mid-Higuera, where would we have issues? And I don't know if we included the photo, but up here at Stenner Creek, this is the city's water treatment plant. And those Nick Teague shared at our Water Resources Advisory Committee that the staff out there running the plant were stuck there for some time. They couldn't get out. The bridge was, their crossing there was completely underwater, as well as some of the main pipe coming into the city as well.
Brandon, do you have the same pictures from the raft?
I have a different set of photos.
Okay, because I
So-
love that picture of.
Yeah, I don't know if we included it or not, did we? Okay, I could try to find it during our discussion, but it was pretty incredible. So we're adding to this and we're gonna save this and then we've got some photos from throughout the city. Here's Marsh Street Bridge. As discussed, we had full flooding over. You could see the water at certain points was much higher than even what it is here. There's our rain gauge,
Yeah,
stream
love
gauge.
That's what we use to monitor. If that gets up to the bridge level, above the bridge, that's the first area of flood. So.
Can I suggest, we talked about this already, but can someone approach PG&E about moving that gauge onto their bridge?
To this bridge right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be a huge win.
that would be a win for us and I would guess PG&E would be
I'll talk to Rob Rossi.
Because, that gauge shorted out, got so high that it malfunctioned.
Whoever gets along with Rob best, let's do that. So
Yeah.
that's not me. And here's Higuera, South Higuera, obviously right here, Mid-Higuera area. Yeah, right at Bianchi is High Street right here. The city fire department actually had a number of photos and videos from this area. Here's a photo we saw earlier, Troy had. Here's Ocean Air. Yeah. And let's see. Los Osos Valley Road. This looked a lot like 95, Wayne, like the video you had provided. We've alluded to this video a few times. Wayne has a video from 1995. It's on our website, our county zone 9 site. I highly recommend it. Just shows a lot of the flooding in and around the city area from 95.
Really much higher gas prices.
Yeah.
So I have a replica picture looking out across the intersection where you can see the fuel prices. It was $1.30, $1.05,
$1.09.
$1.09 and 95. You know, it's like $5.20 or something like that. It's like,
Since the way.
All right, here's Buckley Road at about 7:45. And with the extension, the low point now is the actual bridge area. So, and the flooding is, the width of the flooding is reduced.
Okay,
And then at, Freddie's got a photo at about 1:45 in the afternoon where it's at least at this part, completely clear.
So is that sort of Thousand Hills is?
Yeah, so here's Avila Ranch,
Yeah,
here's the creek, and Thousand Hills Pet Resort is on just the other side
just the other side.
of this here. Yeah.
but Wayne, doesn't this answer your question? You asked if the water from the Avila Ranch side is crossing this way, or is it backing up here and going that way?
Mhm.
And it's clearly coming this way. Start back over this picture, what you just did.
It's hard to tell with the cars going by. You've got water kind of going every direction.
Yeah, but see how that's coming? It's
I think
like-
it's the, yeah.
They
it's like, here, no.
It looks like it's coming.
It sure looks like that.
And that could have been from further up Tank Farm Creek where we didn't clear. So the creek may have jumped out and gone through the detention basins that they've got for Avila Ranch.
Well, his question was, is it the East Fork backing up? Or is Avila Ranch side? That's the big question we're trying to figure out here.
And our East Fork study, we're completing, as we've kind of mentioned, over time, our consultants confirmed it's a backwater, it's water backing up. Because it's so flat from, here to the south. It's so flat, the water just slows down, widens out, and has a really hard time, pushing itself all the way to the main channel of Slow Creek. So that's what's going on. Go ahead.
Chime on that. So when we say the water is backing up, it's the water elevation is backing up. It's not like water is actually flowing backwards. It's just that the elevation is rising. Water's still flowing this direction in the photo. It's just that there is a capacity problem down here that is causing the elevation. Does that kind of make sense? If water would still be flowing this way no matter
Can
what.
you go back 1 or 2 slides?
Yeah, if the East Fork wasn't in any water in it, the Avila property would flow right under the culvert, you would never see it.
So Lower Slow Creek on South Higuera, basically, East Fork comes in at the base of the hills here. So one of the things that we've talked about is the pinch point. So we've got basically a saddle from either side of the freeway and Slow Creek. And so Main and Slow Creek, you've got all that water coming down through there. And the backwater that Troy's talking about is, basically the main flow is coming through here and spilling over. And so it limits the amount of water that can come through from East Fork. And so it's not flowing backwards, it's just slowly metering to the main stem to funnel through the saddle right there. So, that's a significant pinch point that we'll have to, it's a landform feature. So that's gonna be challenging.
And I think here's 101. I think this is after 101 was closed in the northbound direction. Joey was stuck on 101. He could tell you about it if you want to ask him about it, coming up from Arroyo Grande. And then I think this is our last set of photos. Here's Avila Beach Drive. See the Tribune and KSBY. So with that, we can, Wayne, we could open it back up for any discussion.
I thought you would have those pictures.
You guys talk and I'll pull up those.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to be sure that the city heard from the residents of the Buckley area is that Buckley Road itself has two significant dips in it now that didn't exist before Apple Ranch went in. And they both are flooding now and holding standing water. People are hydroplaning on it. It's a real hazard. I know it's in the county, but the city's project has caused the problem. And I would like to encourage the city folks to look at it and see what they can do with the developer about repairing the road. The road has been sunken down at two spots there because they run heavy trucks through it.
There's two driveways, one at Jesperson and one towards the east, where they made driveways where all those big trucks went in to dump dirt. That's where it's happening.
And it's caused flooding that continues for days after the flood, after these big storms.
Expanding on that too, I'm Thousand Oak Pet Resort next door to Kim. This is the first rain we've experienced since the road cut was done, extending Buckley Road over to Higuera. All that earth was moved eastbound down Buckley and basically just raised up, just east of where Apple is doing most of their development. And that's where the flooding and the road problems that we're talking about are happening. I'm concerned, and I think the committee should know I'm not sure if that's a permanent or a temporary space for that earth. But I think that's a factor beyond, the brush and the concrete and all that. I think that's another thing we haven't talked about as far as the flow of the water.
Sorry about the piles that are like
All the
here.
dirt they brought in.
Yeah, I don't know how tall it is, but for most of that length of that parcel,
Like in this section.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
5 feet tall or 6 feet tall. Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know if that's forever. At first we didn't like it because we couldn't see the hills anymore. But now I'm concerned that that's drastically changing the way the water is draining into our creeks. We've never had our bridge go underwater. We did this year. We've never had brush from other properties come onto our property. This year we did our creek. Luckily, it kind of S's 30,000 hills. That's a deep channel. So not like Kim's place where it flattens out. It's usually pretty clear all year round. Not now, after this storm, we're full of debris. And so, I'm not an expert on this, but I would really encourage the committee to look into the effects of raising up the earth there and what that contributed to our problems. Because we just haven't addressed that so far, and everything else we've discussed.
And I think we still have a right of entry from
Please,
you guys.
yeah.
So we'll get out there and get debris removed when we can.
Well, that's good. I'm confused about the.
I know, big picture.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
so
I mean-
we would love to have you here.
Cut brush that comes down the creek, that's concerning.
Yeah.
So we've still got funding left to work on.
Another property, I couldn't get them to come today, but the Drake's Farm, do you guys know where Drake's Farm is?
No.
Yeah, it's to the right of the picture there.
It's at the corner of Hoover.
There you go. That's the property right there.
And they apparently have some levee breaks that they've never had before. So where the creek that's running through them, is that coming?
It's coming from the north.
This is
That
these
was
four.
right there.
These four.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had apparently issues that they haven't seen before, but I can't tell you any more. than
Well, they
that.
got flooded really bad back in '73, and at that time, the county came through and built a second bridge there to relieve the problem the first bridge was causing. And I can only imagine maybe debris got caught in that bridge this time, but because they have had problems before.
Well,
Assuming it's their private levy, it's their
it's
own,
on their property, that's all
yeah.
I assume. But kind of our concern was, what are the things that happened for the first time this year? That's kind of what our neighborhood was trying to zero in on, because we don't know. I mean, we've had these rains before. This isn't the first time we've had a big rain, but was this different? Is that why? Is it your slide you showed earlier where we were already saturated when that next storm hit? That's why we had so much runoff. I mean, it could very well be. But I think the areas is okay, like the flooding on Buckley, that's new. Yeah, it did do that last year with one rain, because that's where the gal hydroplaned.
You know, it's ever since they did the construction.
It was worse this year, but we've lived out there for 39 years. We never saw that. And we saw Buckley's actual flood, and we just dealt with it, you know, and then when they're putting in 720 homes, you go, whoa, you guys know about this? You know, there's a flooding problem out here. If that kind of changes that, you know, you need to address this. So, anyway, so, yeah. So, that's our concern is, and we all have wondered, what is all that dirt they're bringing in? What is that doing? None of us really know. And I think that's a good question.
Where's that from? The Applewood Ranch project?
Yeah, that's all that.
It's this,
From the
is-
budget,
yeah,
Where did this dirt come from? Was from these.
They bring it from everywhere.
Excavation.
He's been buying dirt, I think.
Yeah,
Banking dirt.
through the
yeah.
connection.
It wasn't just that. They-
That was, yeah, I mean, that was a county project.
It was a few hundred truckloads of dirt.
But it was more than that. They were bringing it in before they ever started.
There's been trucks going from every direction to that pile.
They came from San Luis Ranch, they
Yeah.
came from over
Yeah.
at Cal Poly,
Yeah, they came-
Chono, big
Been coming from
project when they were digging there, big trucks have been going through that area. Heading out, for a long time, we finally got them to stop dumping out on Dan Duvall's place where it was cheaper and easier for the construction people to do, but since then. Coming from the Orcutt Ranch, Orcutt specific plan area, I mean, that stuff, that, they were moving big piles of dirt out of a lot of these development areas.
Kathy and I had a meeting with the developer's representative, and he had some comment to us about how lucrative it was to stockpile dirt. And that's what I think is a bank.
Well,
He
there's,
also told us our soil was percolate. He said, no, it won't. Oh, yeah, it will. They're from the valley. So they have found out.
yeah, there's
That's it.
a number of things going on, but you know, for sites under active construction, there's definitely, there should be, and, you know, controls for water coming off those sites. So I know Wayne and I had discussed this, maybe, gosh, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago we met, Wayne? And I passed it along to our, you know, staff, development service staff, and I know, you know, we're in communication with the city, so there are, you know, if there's an issue there, it should be with the people it's with, you know, as far as that during construction, there are rules about that, so it's, but I also observe that as well, so I know, you know, water coming off these entrances, you know, it's the city county interface, and it's important we have the coordination that we do have, so thanks, guys, and
Alan, you got any comments?
we've heard.
I'm not sure about the fill, but definitely temporary stockpiling, we'd be concerned about where you're putting that, and it should be where the dirt is ultimately gonna go. So we've got a buffer mound that's required as conditional approval to separate the ag land from the households in future, and that's maybe part of the fill, but then also they're raising the entire subdivision up out of floodplain. And so they're doing that FEMA modeling, and I think Troy's model would is more elaborate, 2D. I'm not sure how far upstream, but the FEMA models, the preliminary models show that fill is not affecting the floodplain somewhere else. They have to prove that out to FEMA and to us. Our DDM is actually more restrictive than FEMA. You know, we say they've got to match, you can't raise elevation more than, you know, 64 millimeters at 2.5 inches. FEMA would say you get up to a foot, but we're more restrictive than that. So they'll have to satisfy our requirements and also FEMA. So hopefully that's not a, you know, a temporary stockpile that was in the wrong place that was creating some havoc, but we definitely would take a look at some localized flooding that was caused, but ultimately we know they're raising their site up.
Is there any chance the developer will do any repairs on Buckley to damage the road?
I mean, I put a note to that to see where that's occurring. There's a new low point because of loading on Buckley Road. The county, you know, obviously, if they recognize this and have topo or data, they would reach out to the city, say, hey, city, your developer is causing this impact. We need to take a look at it, at how to rectify that.
Yeah, the county development staff have been in review of the Avalanche project is going to partially widen the shoulder of the north side of Buckley Road as well as add bike lanes. And there are drainage improvements planned then, and they will restore the roadway at that time. They're conditioned to do that. I doubt it would be temporary before that. It would make more sense to mobilize the entire fix at one time. But I think you guys.
I think one of the concerns that we as local residents would have would be the ponding of water there on a high-speed road occurring regularly that needs to be addressed before they, it needs to be addressed now, really. It's a safety issue.
Well, since the extension has been done, we have noticed a significant increase in traffic. There is no question that extension. And we have Preserve the Slow Life, which I'm part of. We had feedback signs put in probably like 5 years ago. And I've got the contact with the county now. They used to tell me, oh, we can't get that data. It's too hard or something. Anyway, finally found somebody who knows how to extrapolate the data out of those feedback signs. So I'm gonna, because we've been tracking it for several years, and I'm sure it's gonna show. We got the speed limit reduced from 55 to 50. I think it needs to go to 45, quite frankly. But at any rate, we're making small little headway, but there is a much increased traffic on Buckley. And I just got a call from John Waddell this morning, because we've been wanting Preserve the Slow Life has been through a couple lawsuits. We have raised almost $500,000 for the county to start improving Buckley. And our top priority is the intersection of Davenport Creek and Buckley, which all these horse trailers come out of there. And these cars are going 55, 60 miles an hour. And as Kim will tell you, it takes quite a while to accelerate and a horse trailer. So he said they finally have somebody at the county. They hired somebody, Brandon, you must know who this is. They hired somebody who's now going to do the Buckley corridor study. And I asked them about this morning. I said, so the damage as a result of Avila Ranch trucks, are you going to have Avila Ranch developer pay for that? He didn't really say anything.
Yeah,
So,
we have too many different, we have a bunch of different divisions. We do have a new hire in transportation, is working on the big study. But the damage repair is us. Like I said, we have the developer on the hook for it when it gets there.
Let's move back to this discussion isn't about recent storms and flooding, not about traffic. So
Here's the photos.
this other issue could come up under public comment.
Here's the photos that Christine mentioned. This is the city's water treatment plant. This is Stenner Creek. This is out of Cal Poly. Yeah, you can see what's going on there. So kind of scary. I think this is a video. It's hopefully not too loud.
Yeah, that's the,
Downtown.
yeah.
So I want to thank Nick Teague again for sending these in from city, I think, utilities department. Pretty incredible stuff.
Isn't that the Madonna's place right there up by the mid-high that we were looking at, or is that a different, that first picture is what it looked like?
The first one with the white buildings. that's
Right by Charles Street.
right?
Yeah, that's
What?
the
Right
understanding.
at Cheryl, right in front of the mission.
Right up Mission Plaza, that's the
Mission Plaza right there.
Gotcha, okay.
The backside of
Yes,
it, right?
yes.
And okay, another marsh. We saw this one. We saw these. Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I got. But the Stenner Creek one was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Any more discussions on the flooding issues we just went through?
Well, I had a lot of fun on the day when the water was up almost as far in my yard as 1995, not quite, didn't get up as big, and of course, by that time it rises more slowly because more land further out rises and floods and all the way to Foothill, and 6 feet at my back fence, and just, well, college kids next door, in their wetsuits, got out their kayaks, and they were kayaking over their yard, into my yard, and around in the wetlands and around the corners. They were just having a ball out there. That's, it's a lot of water, but then by the next morning, it was pretty much fences were available, visible, and some things went back down, but that's kind of a kick to see people out to get me. They were so happy when their rent included lakefront property that day.
Kim, did you tell him about Jimmy where he had to go up to the Rigetti and reinforce that levee?
I guess there was a levy at Rigetti Ranch before. If they were concerned, we had those trucks dropping off rocks and stuff that they reinforced the levees with because they were worried that levee was gonna break and then it would wipe out a lot of homes that were just built in Rigetti Ranch.
Oh, no, that was a hill slope
Hillside.
above, yeah, above the homes there. So there was a slope failure. Below the top row, the lots there, that the developer removed the soil so that and this was before the storm on the 9. They're concerned with the slope giving way during the upcoming rain at that point in time. So we authorized them to remove that soil. And that's what the rocks were. So they replaced the soil with some rocks that wouldn't slide down the hill and reinforcing the slope. So it wasn't a levee, it was the slope above.
Somebody said that the mines up there were delivering.
Yeah,
water.
there's a mining road up there, that doesn't drain well, and it creates kind of basically when they constructed the road, they threw all the soil off the edge, it wasn't backed in. There's some slope instability and that was, putting the homes at risk, actually, so. We just preemptively went and addressed the issue.
Do you mean the top level, how the homes are kind of terraced?
Yeah, terrace, the very top level, above that level, there's the mining road, that led to the mines at the hill. So right there where the road was, the access road was sort of a slump, like a movement of the slope where the kind of like a bowl was like shifting. With the concern over the upcoming rain, this was probably on January 5th. They at the recommendations of the geotech. It's on city open space property. But the home that was right below was the home furthest, I guess, east on that hill slope towards St. Farm. And it was right above that, so we authorized them to take equipment and the soil there. It's a good move. Not related to, but. the hill slope there.
Okay, anything else?
I was noticing on the maps of kind of the future expansion of doing some of these clearing. It looked like it went down to Monty Road. Did I see that right?
Yeah, it was marked as the area. I know that's a lot of your property. You
Uh-huh.
guys already out there working at the apple farm and like that.
Working, but we're not clearing the creek, but yeah.
Yeah,
And we had some significant flooding too, so it would be helpful if you guys did make it down that far, because that went all the way up to Monty Road, like definitely, like parts, barns and things that haven't experienced water before, with water going into the bottom levels of them.
I think Monty Road got damaged pretty badly too.
Huh?
Below Monty Road, those ranches got damaged pretty badly too.
Mhm. Yeah, we've got like, it's interesting to see because you can see all of our apple trees with the rack is up as high as the trees are, so we gotta get all of that off of all of the trees to the
Mhm.
property.
have they
before
already?
start budding out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, have they started budding?
Is that apple orchard being used?
Yeah, so we have 3 tenants that lease them, so the Smith family that owns Apple Barn and Gopher Glen.
Mhm.
They lease all the apples that are on the west side of the creek.
Okay.
And then on the east side of the creek, downstream from the big power lines is the Gable family, so that's Slow Creek Farms. And then upstream of that is Two Broad Cider. Leases those apples and that's for
Good.
making cider.
Glad to see them being used again. No further comments on this. We'll move on to item 5. Is that okay?
Yep.
Everybody good? Good. Item 5, ongoing updates. This is updates of various projects that we're working on right now at Zone 9.
And yeah, this month's, I guess, updates will be verbal, which is totally my fault. It's kind of a busy month, so I'm sorry about that. No written updates, but we'll start a new streak for April. So we'll just do verbal this time. And we'll kick it
first
off with
one,
Brian.
Yeah, Mid-Hagar bypass, I'll pass it to our project manager, Chelsea Moore. For the update.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Chelsea Moore. I'm with CIP Engineering. And I've been working with Brian on the Hager bypass first zone in a meeting, but the project is moving along and we've made some progress since the last meeting. We got a letter from Department of Fish and Wildlife on January 3rd, very exciting. Moving some progress towards getting our final permits. We still have to get that permit and the Army Corps. But we are moving forward full steam ahead to get this project going. I had a great site walk with Freddie this week to look at the site post the storm, and as we can allude to later, it was doing what we think it should do, and the bypass channels that we want to create with this project will help with flooding. So we're just working on getting the final agreement with DWR to receive the $6 million grant that we are getting from them. And then the city is actively working with the county on budget for the upcoming year to fund the rest of the project. So we are proceeding with the plans to get final design by the end of this year so that we can start construction. Majority of the construction being in the dry season of 2024. So we are proceeding with the negotiations. We also need some permanent easements with a lot of property owners adjacent to the creek, and getting our final grading design through county review and city review concurrently this year. So
Could you remind me of the estimated at this time total cost?
what a great question. So we have.
Does 91 million, does that come from some other?
It's about 11 million.
That's what?
About 11 million.
11 million, okay, I couldn't remember the number of something that, and I
Six.
thought,
Yeah, it's a big number.
well, it's a big number, but it's not as
Yeah.
big as something, when it was in my mind, it must have been from something else, but that's still about where it is right now, around 11
Yeah,
million.
and
In the
6
mid
million.
1980s, we had a budget to do that project for about 500,000.
Well, why didn't you get on it, man?
City council turned it down.
Yeah. And that
Plain and simple.
budget covers construction costs, our inspection costs, also the property acquisition piece that I mentioned is
Bridge,
the new bridge on Yonke Lane.
tree removals,
Tree removals,
everything, right?
permitting.
Yeah. Thank you.
The request the city made as part of the Zone 9 county budgeting process is for $1.4 million is moving through a process. So far, so good on that.
Yeah, and then there's the $6 million grant, and then part of our budget cycle, and review all the other cities' capital projects, they'll be working with creating a budget request for funding the balance with city funding, and that'll be presented to council in April with budget foundation in totality with all the other projects and programs that the cities are moving forward.
Thank you. Maintenance,
Creek maintenance,
let's be,
did a big presentation on that earlier.
I think we covered that.
we've done it, okay.
Let's ask Freddie.
On the agenda.
Let's ask Freddie how.
We covered some. So creek maintenance, we've got 5 contractors working in Slow Creek from Prado to LVR to remove accumulated debris. Basically everything from town and down to, like I said, Elks Lane, started depositing from Elks Lane down to LVR. So we've got multiple contractors cleaning up the debris, restoring the floodplains and whatnot, removing the trash, incredible amount of trash as well. And then looking at other storm damage locations, San Luis Drive across from San Luis Obispo High School is also identified in the waterway management plan. That vertical bank failure was identified back in the day. It was exacerbated by the December 2021 storm immediately upstream of where the original project location was, and got worse with this recent storm. So now we're looking at about 350 feet of vertical bank, probably 20 feet tall. So we're looking at moving forward with a project to do basically a shotcrete wall to protect that from future erosion. Not only looking out for San Luis Drive, but the 4-inch high pressure gas line that's in the road as well. So significant concerns about making sure that doesn't get any worse. We're also looking at a couple other projects in town where we had storm damage around the Elks Lane area. Right downtown, Mission Plaza, we had a sidewalk failure. Where else? Upstream of the Fruit Ranch Way Bridge, there was the concrete grade control structure on Perfumo Creek. There was a eucalyptus tree growing through that. Well, that eucalyptus tree mobilized during the storm event and it scoured a big hole in that concrete grade control structure. So that will have to get fixed as well. Still working on Perfumo Creek from Fruit Ranch Way down to Cali Joaquin is the next place. And then behind the DMV, Donnie Walter Brothers property, from the DMV down to Prado, we've got a drainage easement there. A bunch of trees, and that big cypress tree that I talked about from Elks Lane is right in the middle of the channel. So we've got a contractor moving in tomorrow to start working on cleaning that section of the creek up. I'm busy, so, but you know, I mean, the amount of debris that we've already removed is phenomenal. Just in order to protect, you know, everybody around the creek as much as we can. So
Where does it go?
it was getting ground up on site. So, you know, basically spreading the wood chips around to stabilize the bare dirt that was there after we cleaned everything up. So.
Arundo. Yeah, we finished doing treatments in October. And the last population that we treated, we did start making headway up Sea Canyon. So we got some good contacts with some landowners in there that are going to help us with some of their other neighbors as well. So it's exciting to get in there, and we're still hoping to do the big population at Los Osos Valley Road. And it might actually be easier this year because when I drove by it today, it's pretty scoured out. And the only thing left is a couple of Arundo clumps and a lot of homeless camps. So a lot of the kind of trails and travel that was more difficult before is going to be a lot easier. So the actual work should be quicker and easier. But
Have you been on property?
I looked at it from the freeway to get some pictures for TFW for my permit, and when they asked me how wide of the pathways I was going to cut, it's like I don't need to cut them anymore.
When will you be starting back working on their rundown?
We usually start around August, September, October. Usually August is when you start reaching out to landowners. September, end of August, September is usually when we're hitting it pretty hard.
East Fork study.
The East Fork study, the county staff provided some significant comments to our consultant, and we expect the final draft any day now. So should be April.
Okay, could we see the draft before the meeting so we can
Yes,
peruse it?
I'm hopeful it will be done soon. You heard me say that before, so we feel pretty good about it this time.
Good. Avila drainage study.
Yeah, I wanted to add this to our updates. The county is in the process of hiring a consultant to evaluate solutions for the, one of the kind of ongoing flooding areas that we have in the counties at Avila, in the community of Avila at San Francisco and First Street area, which is part of Zone 9. And so I expect that in a coming meeting, we'll get to hear about what the scope of work is and what we're going to be looking at. I'm not running that project, but it's something I think the committee should be involved and informed about, again, because it is part of our watershed. It's where all our water goes.
That parking lot and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, so all of that. So that's something we add in. We removed the groundwater sustainability planning updates. That plan is done and on and submitted. And so, this is another area we're looking at. We got, I believe it was ARPA funds to do this study. So look forward to more updates about this in the future from county staff.
Good. Any questions on the ongoing updates from the committee? Moving on then, public comment. Anybody have public comment about something that we didn't discuss already? It's silent. Moving on, future agenda items. If you have any future agenda items you'd like to see on there, either contact Brenda or myself, and we'll make sure that they get addressed somehow. For a future meeting. I'm looking forward to seeing the East Fork at the next meeting. And it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Anything further? If not, I adjourn the meeting.
All right, thank you, good meeting.
Welcome to